So, why do trade unions even exist? It's a really simple question, but the answer is incredibly powerful. You see, they weren't just some random idea somebody had. They were a necessary, almost inevitable, response to one of the biggest changes in human history, the Industrial Revolution. So let's get into it, their origin, their real purpose, and why their story is still being written today. This isn't just some old poem. It's the feeling that kickstarted an entire movement. Just listen to that. The seed ye sow, another reaps. Imagine working yourself to the bone in a dangerous factory, creating all this wealth, but seeing none of it. This deep, burning sense of injustice, this feeling of being a disposable part in a giant machine you had zero control over, that was the spark that lit the fire. Okay, so to really get why unions became so critical, we have to go back and understand the massive power imbalance of that time. It all boils down to something we can call the lone workers problem. Just think about how stacked the deck was. On one side, you've got a single worker. If you dared to complain about the pay, the long hours, or the dangerous conditions, you were just fired. Simple as that. You were completely dispensable. But on the other side, the employer held all the cards. They set all the terms, and they knew there was a long line of desperate people waiting to take your job.
And this core issue, this brutal reality, actually has a name: individual dispensability. It's the simple, harsh fact that any one worker could be fired and replaced, and the business wouldn't even skip a beat. This is what kept wages incredibly low, conditions awful, and individual workers totally powerless. But then, something shifted. What happens when all those individual, supposedly dispensable workers start talking to each other and realize something? Well, that realization sparked an absolutely powerful new idea. And here it is. This is the big aha moment: collective indispensability. An employer could fire one person, no problem, but they couldn't fire everyone. Workers suddenly got it. Together, they weren't dispensable at all. In fact, they were essential. This one idea, this shift in thinking, is the seed from which the entire trade union movement grows.
Okay, so how do you turn an idea like that into something real? Well, it happens through a pretty straightforward three-step process. First, there's the realization of that shared power. Then comes organization, where workers form an association to speak with one single powerful voice. And finally, you get action, using that new collective power to bargain for everyone. And believe me, this was not just some abstract theory. Just listen to this account from India in the early 20th century. The Jamshedpur Labor Association was thus formed amidst the clapping of more than 25,000 people. I mean, wow, you can practically feel the energy in that sentence, can't you? This wasn't some quiet backroom deal. This was a full-blown mass movement. All right, so now you're organized. You have this newfound power. What's next? Well, you need a way to actually use it, and this led to the development of what you could call the union's toolbox. And when you look at what they were actually asking for, it's pretty stunning how fundamental these things are. I mean, they weren't asking for the moon. They wanted safe working conditions, fair pay, some job security, and just a voice in the whole process. These are the things that many of us now see as the basic pillars of a modern workplace. And of course, that brings us to the ultimate tool in the toolbox, right? The strike. It's the ultimate expression of that collective indispensability we talked about. By simply refusing to work, workers could grind a business to a halt. This could be something like a slow-down strike to hurt efficiency, or it could be a massive general strike that involved a whole country's workforce. So with these tools in hand, the trade union movement did way more than just win a few small victories. It played a huge role in forging a completely new world of work. And you gotta remember, this was a long, messy, and often brutal fight. It included everything from early actions like the Luddite movement, where workers literally fought the machines that were replacing them, to massive events like the 1926 general strike in Great Britain. All these efforts eventually led to landmark laws like India's Industrial Disputes Act of 1947. This was not an easy road. So, what was the payoff for all that struggle? Well, it was huge. It translated directly into laws that now protect workers all over the world. The Factories Acts that regulated child labor and safety. The Trade Unions Act that gave unions the legal right to even exist. And then came things like minimum wage laws and workmen's compensation. These rights weren't just given away. They were hard-won through decades of collective action. But here's the thing. It's really easy to look at all this as just, ancient history. And that would be a huge mistake. The story of the trade union is very much an unfinished one.
Which brings us to a really important question for today. With all this progress, is the fight actually over? Have unions done everything they set out to do?
And the short answer? It's a definite no. The challenges have just changed. Today, unions often have to deal with internal political fights that can weaken them from the inside. They struggle with apathy from members who maybe take their rights for granted. And there's always the risk that union leadership can lose touch with the very workers they're supposed to represent.
And all of this leads to the big question for right now. The world of work has been completely transformed again, not by steam engines this time, but by algorithms, automation, and the gig economy. So, what does collective power even mean today? How do you organize when your coworkers are scattered all over the world and your boss is literally an app on your phone? That is the massive question the labor movement is grappling with right now, and it's something for all of us to think about.